Hi there, I'm Crystal Wittevrongle, collaborating with Common Sense Calgary, here today with Shane Byciuk to discuss his candidacy in the upcoming City Council elections for Ward 12. Shane, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So let's just jump right in. I'd love to hear more about you and your foundation coming into City Hall. What makes you the best candidate for this role?
Sure. Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think personally, it's my experience in the community. I've lived in my ward for 18 years. I've been a volunteer in my community for that whole time, and my whole life, actually. Like, I've been a volunteer all of my life. I have a 28-year business background. I was a commercial insurance broker and specialized in risk management. So I have the business background there as well. But I'm rooted in community, and I think that's the difference with me to some of the others that are running.
And I assume you're at the doors and you're meeting people in the community. And so what are you feeling are priorities for your ward and the people living in it?
Sure. Yeah, I've been at the door since June, and everybody's just starting now that the election's getting close. They're really focusing, the neighbors are on the issues now, and they're starting to take a look. The issues in Ward 12 are similar to the issues across the city, but every ward is a little bit different, of course, right?
Mhm.
The things that I'm hearing at the doors is community safety, accountability. They don't feel that people are being listened to, right? And that's a shame. There's like a lack of trust with City Hall and the citizens now, and it shouldn't be that way. Transit is a big issue in our area because we're a growing population, young population. The transit service out here is not very good,
Mhm.
right? Those are the three big things we're hearing, and community safety is definitely across the cities is one of the big ones.
And so from your perspective, is there anything else that's a big priority that maybe people aren't as tapped into?
Yeah, another big one that we're hearing, but it's a citywide issue more so, is the blanket rezoning.
Mm.
People are starting to realize, how that could affect their communities. Seaton is a great example of a neighborhood that's built for density and it has mixed use, and that's fine. You know what you're buying into, and you know what you're moving into when you do that. But some of the neighborhoods, people are upset that their voice has been taken away, and that's what I'm hearing at the doors too. They're furious about it.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. And so when it comes to priorities, there's also the question of who's best positioned to actually work on them or take action. And that brings in the question of, what is the role of municipal government? And what should City Hall be doing from your perspective?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm hearing this at the doors a lot too. And it's a core belief of mine that the city should be focusing on core services, things that impact residents and citizens. Snow removal. We have 30,000 potholes that are not filled. Police, fire, garbage, parks, things like that impact Calgarians. The city needs to focus on that and make sure the tax dollars are being spent on those core services. And that's a core belief of mine.
And so when it comes to the spending priorities, what do you think about maybe having others take on some of that? Like, I'm thinking, for instance, like, is the city the best one to do all of the snow removal or operate the garbage service? Or do you think that there's a role for like public-private partnerships in some of this?
Oh, I would be open to anything like that would save money and improve services, right? But the city does, they have the infrastructure to do that. I think it would be hard a city this size to kind of privatize that. But
Mhm.
just in general, I wouldn't be opposed to anything that would improve services to do better. I do think the city workers are doing the best they can, and they're doing a good job in those areas. I just think that the funding needs to improve and maybe move it from things that don't matter to these kind of issues that impact Calgary.
And so what are some of these things that you think are less of a priority or don't matter that should be deprioritized?
Well, there's lots, but I think, like we see the city, the climate emergency, for example. Nobody's a climate denier, but when we can't even track. In the last council meeting, they tried to have an audit, and they said that would take too much time. There's 35 departments. Well, where's the money going? Right? This is a basic necessity to be able to say this is where the money's being spent. Right? We can find money to shift to those core services. It's easy to do. There just has to be a will of council to do that.
Mhm, mhm. And what do you think on the other side of that equation when it comes to property taxes? Are they too high, too low? Like, what is your belief on city council in that respect?
Yeah, I hear this at the door every day. Most people are not opposed to paying taxes, of course, because they know that the city of Calgary taxes you pay have the most direct impact with your life. your day-to-day life, police, service, that kind of thing. The taxes, though, keep going up every year. But people are telling me I'm not seeing an increase in the services of that. So that's where the frustration's lying. So people are saying, if I have to pay X, 3% a year, 5% a year, it would be nice if I could see that that spending was actually going to improve our city or improve my daily life. And it's not, that's the perception that people are having at the door. So it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that respect, we are a growing city, very quickly growing city. In order to expand services or deliver this needed service, do you see property taxes continuing to grow, or would you support cutting them? What are your thoughts around that?
I think that you need to do a full audit, right, on where the money's being spent first, and that is up at budget time, right? And the city is growing, so we do need more police. We do need more fire halls. We do need a downtown police station. We do need more road work. We do need more potholes filled. So there is a cost when the city keeps growing like that, but there's also a tax increase base, the tax base is increased, right? You can't just keep increasing taxes without explaining it to the people. Here's why, and here's exactly where it's going to, right? And I think, the taxes, we've got to get it under control. But I think that the core thing is that they have to be spent on core services. And I think people will not have a problem, most people, not everybody, if they say, okay, I understand now why my taxes are going up. It's going to this. And you know what? We're not spending it over here on that. And I think that's where the city needs to improve their communication, the budgeting process. And I think the councillors as a whole need to take that to the community and explain that better.
And so speaking of budgeting, we're expecting to see a surplus this year, or at least it's reported as such. And what are your thoughts on how that should be handled? Should it be put into reserves? Should it be given back to taxpayers? What do you think?
Affordability is a big issue in Calgary right now. So I think it sends a really sour message to people when they say we had to increase your taxes 8%. Oh, but we have hundreds of millions of dollars in that we took too much. Right? That needs to be adjusted, and I think that needs to be returned to the citizens or factored into the next budget so that they can reduce the taxes on that. Right? This is important. People are paying the taxes. They're not understanding why the taxes are going up, yet they find out that they've paid more than they needed to, and the services are not improving. It's a flawed system. It needs to be improved.
Yeah, it's a recipe for frustration, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. And so speaking of affordability, affordable housing is also something, we talk a lot about as Calgarians, and whether some support the city subsidizing housing directly or being in favor of, the city kind of stepping back and letting the market do its job by, cutting approval times or whatever it might be. What is your approach? What do you think is the best approach to affordable housing?
Yeah, for me personally, this one hits home because I grew up in a single parent household and I lived in a Calgary housing complex in the 1980s. On the flip side, I've gone on to have a very lucrative, wonderful career that I wouldn't be able to enjoy if I lived anywhere else. So I understand the affordability issue. The city, I don't think that there should be rent controls or programs like that. The city does a good job with the Calgary Housing, with the Attainable Homes program, and working with the nonprofit partner. I think that the city doesn't need to be involved directly in building housing. That should be the market, right? I do understand that affordability is an issue, and I do understand that people they need affordable housing. But at the flip side, I don't know that taxpayers should burden that over and above, like to everywhere across the city. So it's a touchy issue. It's important. It's important to me, but I don't think at the end of the day, just my beliefs is that the city should not be building homes for everyone. Right? We've seen them. Rents are already starting to come down. I've seen online. Right? I know the rents have been going up like crazy. Right? With the interest rates going up, the number of people moving to Calgary. It's always a cycle, and it's tough when people move here and they can't afford a place. I get it. I understand it. Right? But I think the city needs to work with our partners and the programs that they do have and find some kind of balance.
I agree. And I also share a very similar background to you. Just a note is that, as a child, I was also in Calgary housing, and my parents worked very hard to get us out of that. And without that, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I am grateful for programs like that as well. But yes, I agree. There is a place for the market, and there's a place for the city. That leads me to thinking about the blanket rezoning, because I know part of that that's being considered potentially a bit of a success is that, in a year, there's been 1,500 new units created through the blanket rezoning. How do you think that feeds into affordability? Do you think that that's a good metric to use when we're talking about affordability and the blanket rezoning?
I don't think so. Not for affordability.
Mm-hmm.
What you've seen happen is a developer will take a $500,000 wartime bungalow, right, on a big lot, right, and that was rented by someone $1,000 a month, 2,100 a month. Now that's gone, right? And they're going to put up
Mm-hmm.
6 units. Those are going to be 8,000 each, right? That's not affordable. That's not good. If you drop the property values. It increases the climate. That's not even that many homes. I think it's not doing what they do, right? And I don't think anything.
Your volume's cutting out just a small bit. I don't know if you can get a little bit closer. I think I got most of what
Sorry
you
about
said.
that.
No worries. And so are you in support of blanket rezoning? I can't recall if you said that you thought it was a bad idea or if it was something you support.
No, I'm 100% against it. We actually had a media release the other day. We are repealing it at my community's first team and I. We signed a pledge, a guarantee that at the first council meeting, we are going to repeal it.
Okay.
But I put a notice of motion to repeal that 100%. I'm not against development, but I am against the citizens' voice being taken away. People are furious across the city because of that. You cannot just put a one size fits all in every neighborhood and leave the people's voices out of it. I was community association president in my area, and I couldn't imagine, not being able to work with the city and go to the neighbors and say, look, here's what they're proposing, here's what they want to develop. That's gone. That's gone. And people are furious, right? It needs to change, and it's going to change with communities first. So,
and so, there was a lot of opposition to the policy when it was being put before council. And some people said that it was kind of a vocal minority that was, kicking around dust about the blanket rezoning. But when we look at it, so far, overwhelmingly, it seems most people do not support it. And so, do you think that big decisions like this should be decided directly by voters in the future rather than city council, like directly in a plebiscite?
Yeah, well, this blanket rezoning, that was the largest public hearing in Calgary's history, right? And the 8 councillors didn't read the room. Like, people are taking time out of their day. That went on for 2 weeks, a week and a half, 2 weeks, right? We've never seen anything like this. They should have read the room, right? And say, hold on, that's not a vocal minority to have that many people come down to City Hall, take time out of their day, right? This is the citizens telling you this is a freebie. This is telling them this is not acceptable. We don't like how this is presented, and City Council should have done something about that. So I do think that should have been brought on a plebiscite. Some of our community's first members tried that, and it was shot down, right? So, I mean, why do you want to take away citizens' right to express themselves and vote on the issue? It doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that some of these bigger projects should be, or bigger policies, people should have a voice in, absolutely. And that gets me thinking about the big projects, the 4 large projects that City Council has approved. The new event center, the BMO Center expansion, Arts Commons, and the Foothills Fieldhouse. The city's chief financial officer had said we could really only afford one of these projects without significant financial risk, yet council voted to move forward on all 4. What do you think about that?
I think that, we need to make sure that our dollars are spent properly. And I think those projects are necessary, right? Because people are saying that they need them. I think the event center is great, not because it's just a new stadium for the Calgary Flames, is how some people will present that. That whole area is going to be redeveloped into something that Calgary needs for our downtown, for a year-round place to go. Right. The library, the public library downtown, and the BMO Center cost probably pretty close to what the event center is going to cost. I'll never use the library down there, and I'll never use that, but that's okay because Calgarians will. But Calgarians are going to use that event center as well. The deal that we ended up getting was way better than what we had previously that was destroyed. We got more money from the provincial government. The whole area is going to be developed. And this is actually will build the city. I think that's where the city needs to focus on things that are going to improve Calgarians' life.
And so if it becomes very clear that the CFO was correct and that this is a financial misdecision or bad decision, which of those 4 projects would you support as councillor?
Oh, it would be the event center. That's already going though, right? So that like I said, that whole area is going to be amazing for Calgarians.
Yeah.
If you go to any other city, even Edmonton, Toronto, they have these areas where it's like a gathering place. There's going to be restaurants and hotels. That area is a dead zone, right? And it's been for years. And so I think that's going to revitalize that part of downtown. It will bring people back downtown, right? And I think that's the one that I would support.
So, having a community kind of meeting space, like you said, or bringing people back to downtown gets me thinking about safety. And I know that's a top concern for most people. I have a young family. I don't love going downtown personally. Lots of people don't take transit anymore because of safety concerns. What do you think about the city's strategy when it comes to transit safety? And what would you do differently?
You're absolutely right. People do not feel comfortable taking the train. I've talked to my neighbors. I've talked at the doors. People say they used to commute on the train. They won't do it anymore. They've been harassed, been robbed, right? I did a video downtown a couple of weeks ago, and as we're shooting the video talking about public safety, there's somebody smoking crack right behind me. We had to cut it out. I mean, I'm 48 years old. I grew up in Calgary. I would take that C train downtown, 12 years old, and we would go to Stephen Avenue to look at records at a music store there. My son's 15 and he's a boxer. I wouldn't let him go on that train. I wouldn't even let him go to Chinook Center on the train. It is a huge issue because people are being robbed. It's open drug use. People are not feeling safe. It's unacceptable. Like the strategy's failed. We need more peace officers on there. We need police. We need more initiatives that make the people feel safe to get downtown and to enjoy downtown, right? And it's been a failure the last 4-8 years.
And so what would you do differently? Like, I'm thinking mainly, would you support something like having closed fare gates? I know council had looked into that previously, but even before piloting it, had decided that cost and logistical issues were perhaps too much. Is that something you'd be willing to consider, or do you have other things on your mind when it comes to the transit specific portion of that?
Yeah, I know they've looked at that and the cost was prohibitive, but I think you got to get down to the core problem before just locking the trains down, right? When I'm standing on the C train platform or just adjacent to it and people are openly doing drugs, I mean, that's the problem. Right. It's, they need to address that. Those people need their mental health supports, their addiction supports, but there's a lot of crime too. And the police are trying their best to clean these areas up. But, the police are short staffed. We're way behind the national average on police officers. We were actually just endorsed yesterday by the Calgary Police Association, myself and Communities First Team, that they endorsed us as a group because we want to hire 500 more police officers. Because city safety is nothing else matters if you don't feel safe in your city.
Yeah, and that is definitely a real concern for a lot of people. And then that also gets me thinking about the Schumer Center, the supervised consumption site, being Alberta's only supervised consumption site in downtown Calgary. And there's been a lot of controversy between the city and the province as it relates to that site. Do you support closing it? And if so, where should these folks find themselves being supported?
Sure. I was down there a couple of weeks ago. We were down there as a team to do an interview. We talked to business people in the area. Their business is shattered because of the open drug use and the people go in there. That building is a provincial responsibility. We've often said what goes on inside the Schumer is a province of Alberta. But once that streams out into the city, that becomes a city of Calgary problem. So we need to work with the province to find a solution to that because residents don't feel safe. Businesses are suffering. People need to be able to feel safe to be able to walk in their neighborhoods. So I think that there needs to be work with the province. The province said they're willing to close it. The city of Calgary can't control what goes on in there, like I said, but we can work with the province. The city can provide land and we can find solutions for better support for those people.
So you see the city's role then, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you see the city's role as more supportive with the province still taking the lead, obviously.
Because well, mental health and addiction, that's not a city of Calgary mandate, right? And when I talk about core services, I'm not saying that's not important, but what I'm saying is that city taxes, should not go to that. We should not focus on that. We should work with our nonprofit partners that help these people, and the province 100%, because this is a mental health addiction and healthcare issue, right? The city of Calgary doesn't need to start getting involved in those things. They need to focus on what they do and what they do best, and let the other levels of government work on those priorities.
Yeah, I agree. There's definite division between who should handle what, and I think we need to get back to paying attention to that at the city level. I mean, even at the provincial level as it relates to the federal government. But
Sure.
I look back at June 2024 when we had the water main break. And that taught us Calgarians, or should have taught us Calgarians, something about critical infrastructure, in that maybe we're not prioritizing it, or maybe we're not taking care of some of our critical infrastructure. What do you think about that? Both in terms of, first, how did the city handle that whole thing, in your opinion? And second, what did it tell us about the way city handles critical infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it was a reactive measure, right? I think they did the best they could, but I know people that were affected, like right on that line, that didn't have water, right? It should not happen in a city of our size. This is very Mickey Mouse kind of a thing to happen, you know? I think that the city, and the other thing too, sorry, is my background in risk management tells me, why was this not a whole procedural review done of this? This is not going back to last year. This is a problem that they should have addressed years and years ago, right? And I'm sure if the city engineers have done their reports, maybe they did, I don't know, but that should have been addressed. The other problem is we were able to get that pipe, thankfully, from San Diego. But if that were to happen right now, I've been told we would not be able to source that pipe, right? So the city needs to address these issues, make sure that these things are planned in ahead, so that these things don't happen again, because that could have been disastrous. Yeah,
absolutely. And so, with regards to how the city actually managed the crisis, what would you have done differently on city council?
well, like I said, I think it was reactive. I know that the Ward 1 councillor, and Sonia Sharp, who's running for mayor, she was on there. She was on the ground floor, right? I know that it wasn't in the media, but I know she was delivering water to people. She was out there doing that. The city was reactive in that, naturally, because they didn't know, and I think that the communication was not that great about, please don't have a shower, please don't wash your clothes, please don't water your lawn. Whereas if it was communicated properly, somebody down in like Seaton isn't going to understand that up in Bowness there's a water issue, and it's like, does it really affect me? And I think they could have done better communication on that part at a ward level, especially.
And then, in terms of the city's way of prioritizing critical infrastructure, like how would you recommend they do it differently, like both with regards to the water pipes, but to other important things to residents?
Well, the city has massive staff and development or departments that handle these things, right? I would like to see what their plans are for all of these scenarios that come up. Now, I'm sure that the city has plans for these. I would assume, because that would be really bad if they
I would
didn't.
hope, yes.
Yeah. But I'm not privy to that. But what I would like to do is I would like to actually see that. I would like to see a roads, infrastructure, water. I want to understand better, to see exactly behind the scenes what they have planned and what they do. Rather than when these things happen, I know that emergency department works really hard, right? But their job is to get information out and react. But we need to plan ahead, right? And I think that's the goal of city council, to work with administration on that.
And in planning ahead, when we look at something like the Green Line, for instance, that has been in the works for so many years, but is now serving less Calgarians, is shorter in terms of its scope, and it costs twice as much. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that project?
Yeah, it's been a disaster. Like, I live in Cranston, and they've been talking about that for almost 15 years. Right. And the original design, as you know, was to go from Seaton all the way up north. And now it's said it's a fraction of that, double the cost, and the timelines are now way off. Right. It's been a failure. It's been a failure to Calgarians who were sold on the idea that there would be transit coming. Now it's going in my ward, it's only going to Shepherd, which is just north of Mackenzie Town, right? And it's not going until 2031, right? So these timelines are whacked. There is so much young population in my ward. People would use that to get to university, to get to work, right? But here we are, 7 years away. Yeah, it's been a failure. I'm glad it's going, but I mean, it could have been done way better.
And so if you're on city council and yet another series of cost overruns presents itself, what's going to be your approach to that?
Well, I think the timelines and the budgeting has been approved, right? So I would hope that would not become an issue, right? I mean, things get more expensive every year, and that's what we've seen. If they would have started this 5 years ago, the costs without the due rise of inflation would be less. I think we need to make sure that project stays on budget and that contractor would be responsible for that, right? We can't just have overruns because the city or the provincial government's going to pay for it, because that comes from tax dollars, right? And the citizens they're not going to be happy with that. It just needs to be managed properly.
And so with these mega projects where the city is involved and the province is involved, like, what do you think the proper split is between like risk and costs? Like, should the city be more responsible or should the province be more responsible? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the project itself, right? And who is benefiting the most from that, and who is responsible for that type of funding. And I think they need to work on that to make sure that it's equitable, right? It would depend on the project, but I think there should be a balance there, and it's because at the end of the day, it's you and I that pay that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what lessons do you think that city council or Calgarians even should take from what's happened with the Green Line to date?
Oh, that's a good question. Because it's changed so much over the years and over like 3 different councils, right? I think that the presentation was done well. The original, what's the word I'm looking for? Imagination of the Green Line was done well. But as that started to shrink because there was problems with the city and the provincial government and the infighting over that, the lesson that I would take is you need to work together with everybody to make sure these things get done, right? And I think that's the lesson that I take from this, is I'm seeing, you want to get the money from the province or the federal government, but you want to also fight and not be a true partner in that. And I think that's the lesson that people need to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, working together kind of leads me into thinking about this is the first time that the city is seeing political groups or parties at the municipal level, and you're part of Communities First. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Sure. Well, the provincial government passed that law last year that would allow municipal parties. A lot of people that don't understand how the party system, they think that we're farm teams of the NDP or the UCP or the Liberal Party, and that's not true. These are municipal parties. The thing that I find important about the party system is so many times voters have been misled or fooled based on what somebody their core beliefs are, their political beliefs, their fiscal responsibility beliefs, etc. My belief has always been present who you are, present it truthfully, and let the voter decide. But we've seen so many times people come in and they say, I'm a strong fiscal conservative, but then they get onto council and it's completely different than what they presented themselves as. And that's frustrating. I think that the party system itself, while it's new and evolving, and who knows how it's going to end up after the election, because it's only in Calgary and Edmonton, I think that it allows people to understand your core beliefs and what you're running on, and it's clear as day. There's no surprises. There's no shifting focus later on. We've listed what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And then if that resonates with voters, perfect. They know where we stand.
Yeah. And then at the provincial or the federal level, do you have any affiliations there at all personally?
Sure. Well, I've been a conservative all my life. I don't fit in well in a lot of circles because I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm also a compassionate conservative, and you can see that through my charity work, that I've done all of my life. Right. I don't believe in legislating social issues. Not that it has one iota to do with the city of Calgary, but I've sat on boards for PC, UCP, a Conservative Party, over the years,
Mhm.
not since COVID.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I have loved hearing your responses. But if there's one thing you could leave with our viewers, as well as just voters in general, what's the one thing you'd like people to take from this interview?
Sure. Well, this is a very important election. You know, people have been very angry. We're hearing it at the doors. We're hearing it. We've heard it for 4 years. There's a lot of anger out there, right? Which tells me that people want change. The only way we are going to get that change is to get people to vote. Unfortunately, municipal elections usually have the lowest turnout, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot going on right now in the city. And advanced voting starts Monday or October 6th. And October 20th, I would just urge everybody to do your research on your candidates in your ward, right? And make sure you vote. Make sure you tell your neighbors to vote. That's the takeaway I'd like from this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shane, for taking the time to explain your priorities and explain your positions on these things. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. And you know, Shane stole my closing remarks with get involved. Get engaged, get out and vote. It's very important. We all have a voice, and let's say what we want to hear when it comes to city council. There you go.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I apologize.
All good.
Technology.
All good. Well, thank you so much, Shane. I really appreciate the conversation.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.